profit margins in the business? Sure, okay. So I kind of knew where I was going. I didn't quite know how I was going to get there, so I took an ad out on Craigslist. And I got tons of people, sending us resumes, and we started setting up interviews. And right around that time, I had an email forwarded to me by a friend from somebody overseas, and he had a small shop with about 10 employees. And he said, hey, I can do this for you for around $5 or $6 an hour. And I was obviously intrigued. Like I said, we knew nothing about outsourcing at the time, but I was open to an opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. So we went ahead and set up some interviews on the telephone. And I hired my first employee, and he was with me for a total of 2 days. And then I lost him. He ended up going to another company. That was my first experience outsourcing. But hey, I realized that as entrepreneurs, we have to remain flexible in our approach, yes. And sometimes you have to kiss a few frogs before you find your princess. So I went back to the hiring table a second time. And I remember the first person I spoke to on the phone was a young lady, and she was really timid. And she said, can you have me? And I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't going to work. Now, she was qualified. She had a college degree, but she was just green on the phone. My clients and prospects would eat her for breakfast. So the next person picked up the phone, young gentleman. Correct. Okay. Next person picked up the phone, a young gentleman, and he said, I was like, oh my gosh. Now, he had some college under his belt, but still just wouldn't fly on the phone. Third person picked up the phone, and he said, good afternoon, sir. How are you today? I was like, oh my gosh, this guy sounded amazing. And I was like, wow, this guy's great. And he sounded so good, I couldn't tell whether he was a Filipino or whether he was American. So I said, I've got to ask you, are you American? Are you Filipino? He said, sir, I'm a Filipino. I've lived here all my life. I was like, wow, this guy's amazing. So I said, listen, I have to ask you, how is it that you sound so amazing? And he said, sir, I've been a DJ on the local radio station for the last 3.5 years.
Well, you connected there.
And I, of course, said, you're hired, absolutely. And I hired Ainsley. And Ainsley was amazing for the 2 weeks that I had Ainsley. And then I lost Ainsley. No matter what I did, I could not get into the office on time every day. Yeah. So, question, how many of you have more time on your plate than you know what to do with? Put them up high. It's amazing how little things change. So I didn't have any more time, and I said, I'm done with this. I'm done with outsourcing. I'm done. And I went back to Craigslist and started going through resumes and so on and so forth. But I couldn't get out of my mind this idea of employees for around $5 or $6 an hour that could do this stuff, right? And I just knew that if I could make it work, that I could make a killing. So reluctantly, I went back to the hiring table a third time. But this time I did my due diligence. I did my research. I wanted to figure out what it would take to get great employees most of the time. Now, is it possible to get great employees all the time? No. I'm the first to admit that I'm in the people business, and people are unpredictable. But I want to make sure I had great employees most of the time. I want to make sure that they were hardworking, trustworthy, honest. I want to make sure that I had a very low attrition rate because I didn't want to hire somebody just to lose them. And I want to make sure they had very light accents so they could speak to my clients and prospects all over the world. So I did crack the code, and I ended up hiring Carl. And Carl was employee number 1 at Philippine VA. Now, Carl didn't just get it, he really got it. And what I did is I was the trainer. I trained Carl. And so during my training with Carl, I did something that was kind of techy. I'm not super tech savvy. You guys are probably a little more techy than I am, most of you, but not all of you. We had an extra computer sitting on my desk, and we set up a remote desktop. You all pretty much know what a remote desktop is. So I could see what Carl was doing while I was working with him. Now, I wasn't really so concerned with what Carl was doing while I was working with him. But what I was concerned with was what Carl was doing when I was not working with him, right? Because I feel that a good judge of someone's character is sort of what they do in their off time. Yes? Yes. Okay. Excuse me. So I would work with Carl for about an hour or so at a time, small bits, because I was busy, and then inevitably I'd be interrupted by a phone call or a meeting or something that demanded my attention. And I cut away from Carl, but I could see what Carl was doing on his computer screen. And what I saw amazed me. Each time I got off the phone with Carl, he would open up a notepad file or a WordPad file, and he would begin typing copious notes verbatim from our last hour together. And when I saw that, I said, cha-ching. And I was right. Carl took off like a rocket. We put him in customer service, actually. And we began to grow. And we brought on the next person, and the next person, and the next person. And then later we opened our own shop. Carl came over as a trainer. We brought on the next person, the next person, the next person, and our business flourished. Now, first of all, what happened in the U.S.? Well, in the U.S., we began to hire more people to manage our employees overseas. So was that good for the U.S. economy? Yes? Yes. And those people spent more money in the U.S. Was that good? Yes, absolutely. They paid more taxes. Was that good? No, taxes are bad. We stayed in business. Was that good? Yeah, it was good. We flourished. We bought more goods and services in the U.S. Was that good? Yeah. We hired more people in the U.S. Was that good? We paid more taxes. Was that good? No, that's not good. But it doesn't end there. So what happened overseas? Well, I would pay Carl performance bonuses based on performance. And he was amazing. I was glad to do it. It wasn't a lot of money for me. But for Carl, it was a small fortune. So what happened? Well, Carl, and by the way, how many of you are either a Filipino or you know a Filipino? Everybody. You either know where you are. So if you know a Filipino or you are a Filipino, you know that there's no such thing as a Filipino that just supports themselves, right? Mm-hmm. They're always helping their mother, their brother, their sister, their father, right? They're always paying it forward. And Carl was no exception to that rule. So each month, Carl was making a lot of money. So each month he was able to send money home to his mom. He was able to put himself through school. He was able to put his sister through school. Carl graduated. His sister graduated. It took Carl about a year to get his visa. And today, Carl is a physical therapist here in the U.S. Okay, yeah, and he resides in Chicago, and we're still very good friends today. And I'll tell you a funny story. The other day, I was speaking in Chicago, so guess who picked me up at the airport? Carl, that's right. And I love Chicago deep dish pizza, so we went out for pizza, and then he drove me to my gig, and I said, Carl, you gotta come in and see me speak, because there isn't a single time I speak on stage anywhere in the world where I don't tell the story of Carl. I always talk about Carl, no matter what, in some way, shape, or form. And he said, oh, Dee, that's cute. But it's my birthday and I gotta go. So he has never seen me speak. Now, the other day, he actually came to LA, and he stayed with us for a couple days, and that was awesome, but still, I've never seen him speak about it. But here's what I want you to know, and that is that I shudder to think what would have happened had I not gone back to the hiring table that third time when I was done, right? I was totally frustrated and found my Carl. And just in case you haven't figured out, the only real reason that we're here this weekend is we want you to find your Carl. Or we want you to find help in your business. Because we want you to succeed. Because we're right there with you. Okay, we're in the trenches. We get it, you know? And so what I want you to know is that we're on your team. We love you, we support you, and we wish you all the very best of success. Go out there and make it happen. Thank you for being with us.